Hey everybody, welcome to the Boulder Seventh-day Adventist Church. We are so glad that you took the time to, I would normally say drive and be here with us. But anyways, thank you for taking the time to press the buttons necessary to join us today live here as we worship as a community. I hope that you had a great week and that your Sabbath day is going fantastic. Pray blessings for each one of you and for the rest of our time together this morning. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Well, hey guys. Hey, good morning, everybody. It is good to be with you again. We just want to invite you once again to join us in singing as we worship this morning. That the highest king would welcome me. I was lost, but he brought me in. Oh, his love for me. Oh, his love for me. Who the sun sets free. Oh, is free in me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am free at last. Free at last, he has ransomed me. His grace runs deep. While I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Yes, he died for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Oh, I am who you say I am. Who the Son sets free, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. I'm a child of God, yes I am. I'm a child of God, yes I am.
Hello everyone. I am sitting outside on my front porch, and I've been spending a lot of time pulling weeds and getting my flowers planted and just doing some yard work. And have I been getting sweaty, and have I been getting dirty? And it reminded me of a story. The Bible tells us about a time when Jesus was getting together with his friends, and usually when you got together, someone was there to help make you feel welcome in the home and to make you feel clean. And the best way they could do that was to wash your feet, because they'd be dusty and dirty. But nobody was around to do that or willing to do that, and so Jesus said, I'll do it. I will clean your feet. And so he took a bucket and he started cleaning off his friends' feet, and he washed them and cleaned them and made sure that they were nice and clean, and that was such a good feeling after running around and being dusty, and just let them feel what it was like to feel clean and to be taken care of. And so Jesus showed us that it's just the little tiny things that we can do to help us to make other people feel good and to feel clean. Now, I don't think that we can run around a lot washing each other's feet right now. We'd be a little bit too close. But there are things that we can do to help each other and to take care of each other. And maybe you've got flowers in your yard. Someone brought these flowers to me that they picked from their own yard, and that just helped me to feel cared for and loved. So maybe that's something that you might think about doing. How about sending someone a very special gift? Oh, when I got this gift, I knew that this person knew exactly what I loved, and it just made my day and made me feel so good inside. Maybe it's just finding some stickers that you have around the house and making some cards and sending cards to people that you love, and just say, I love you, and I want you to be safe, and I want you to know I'm thinking about you. So just like Jesus did something that would help us be clean and feel clean and serve us, there are lots of different ways that you can serve each other, even in your family or friends far away. So take time to make a list of what you can do to help someone today. We'll see you next time.
Hi, Boulder Church community. My name is Lil Walters, and today I'll be giving the announcements. Monday, May 25th is Memorial Day, so I wanted to thank you for taking time out of your day to honor those who have fallen in service of our country and the U.S. Army. Many families have been affected by such loss, and we ask for God to help comfort them and encourage them in these hard times. Vacation Bible School has gone online this year, so remember to join us June 8th through the 12th for Mystery Adventure Island, with games, crafts, music, and science experiments to help us understand more about God and His place in the Bible and all that. So make sure to go online and register at boulder.church/BBS. And lastly, if you are struggling to make ends meet during these trying times, don't hesitate at all to contact Pastor Jen at jennifer@boulder.church. Remember, 2 F's and 2 N's. And you can always donate to help church members in need at boulder.church/donate. And that's all the announcements I have. Let's close out with prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, I pray that you be with the family members who are struggling with unemployment during these trying times, and for those members who are sick at local nursing homes. I also pray for our mental health, because being alone is against human nature. We struggle with it, and some of us are struggling with self-harm, addiction, and I pray with you that you be with those who are struggling with it and their family members. I would also like to praise you for 14-year-old Joshua, who recently recovered and was able to go home and see his family again. In your name I pray. Amen.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. So Jesus, build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. Jesus, I will trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. 'Cause you're worthy. Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. Come thou fount never ceasing, call for songs about His praise. Teach me some melodious song sung by flaming tongues above. Praise the mount I'm fixed upon it, the mount of Thy redeeming love. Here I raise my Ebenezer, hither by Thy help I come, and I hope by Thy good pleasure safely to arrive at home. Jesus sought me when a stranger, wandering from the fold of God. He to rescue me from danger interposed His precious blood. Oh, to grace, how great a debtor daily I'm constrained to be. Let Thy goodness, like a fetter, bind my wandering heart to Thee. Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it, prone to leave the God I love. Here's my heart, oh, take and seal it for Thy courts of love. Here's my heart, oh, take and seal it for Thy courts. More, here's my heart, oh, take and seal it for Thy courts above. In the fire, in the flood, through the need and through enough, we say, Jesus, You are Lord of all. In the light, in the dark, with our lips and with our hearts, we say, Jesus, You are Lord of all. Ever faithful, ever true, ever sure to see us through. We surrender all to You. We say, Jesus, You are Lord of all. In the sun, in the rain, through the joy and through the pain, we say, Jesus, You are Lord of all. In the calm, in the storm, when we sing and when we mourn, we say, Jesus, You are Lord of all. Ever faithful, ever true, ever sure to see us through. We surrender all to You. We say, Jesus, You are Lord of all. In our doubt and belief, when we cannot hear or see, we say, Jesus, You are Lord of all. And in life,
morning, Boulder Church. It's good to have you back here in the sanctuary. It's been a very, very long time, and I thought maybe it was time that we spent a little time back here in the sanctuary. Actually, I just realized there's literally no one here. Like, no one. Which, if there's no one here, then that means I don't have to be here. And if I don't have to be here, I think that means we need to take this whole sermon to a completely different place. This is going to be fun. This is going to be fun. I kind of feel like the professor that hears the class wants to go outside for the day. I'm going to be that professor. Let's go outside. Yeah, this is going to be fun. How did nobody think of this before? It's going to be awesome.
Now before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart out of this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. During supper, when the devil had already put it into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going back to God, rose from supper. He laid aside his outer garments, and taking a towel, tied it around his waist. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, do you wash my feet?" Jesus answered him, I
want to start this morning with a disclaimer. That disclaimer is this: John 13 is a lot to bite off for just one sermon. So rather than take the whole chapter, I'm just going to focus on what Jackie read, which is verses 1 through 20. It's a story about Jesus washing the disciples' feet. That'll start to make sense more as we go through. It'll also answer the question of how we suddenly went from the stage to inside of my car. We're going on some errands today. I'm going to take you along with me. We're going to turn this into a true field trip. And we'll talk about the habits of Jesus and what that looks like in real time instead of just reading it off of a page. Now, the second disclaimer is an important one, and it's going to kind of talk about movie magic a little bit and the idea of how we get these sermons into your hands every single Sabbath. Hang on. For some of you, this is going to be kind of a big deal. And I want to be clear, this is the way it's been the whole time. Maybe you need to know this information now. Maybe it's good that we're admitting this here. This is not a live video. You are not here with me live in my car. As a matter of fact, none of what we do on Sabbath morning is live at all. We shoot all of these videos throughout the week. We send them over to Elia. Elia edits them down, and then he sends them to Pastor Vanessa, and Pastor Vanessa posts them onto YouTube, where you're watching right now. So the disclaimer is this: there's going to be a bunch of things that are about to happen that are going to make you very concerned that potentially I'm breaking some social mores, let's say, of the Sabbath, because some of our errands are going to take us into not so church-like places. And I don't want you to think the pastoral staff is somehow breaking some of those social mores. So that's the first one. And the second one is this: I'm about to pop over to a voiceover, and you are going to stop seeing me speak, and you're going to start following me along with a bunch of footage that I used to capture these moments, which is going to happen now. So don't panic. John 13 begins with an account of Jesus coming to the conclusion that his death was imminent. Although he had spent a decent amount of time telling the disciples that his death was on the horizon, today marks a point of no return for him. It says that he reached this conclusion while sitting at the dinner table of all places. Having eaten his full, Jesus stands up and takes off his robe, ties a towel around his waist before filling up a bucket with water, with which he begins washing the feet of the disciples. After debating back and forth with the disciples who cannot reconcile the fact that Jesus is doing something of such low status when he sits in such high regard to these men, Jesus reveals what it is he's doing and why. In verse 12, Jesus begins by saying, "Do you not understand what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought to also wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you should do just as I have done to you." It's this section here that sets Christians into following a habit of Jesus that we practice in the same way. For many churches, once a season, we gather together to celebrate communion and practice the service of foot washing as directed by Christ to do so in John 13. The series we're studying through is devoted to the habits of Jesus, and it is for that reason that I am highlighting this section over the others in the remainder of the chapter, as this habit has become our own. But before that, a third disclaimer. I personally struggle with foot washing, and because of this struggle, I have a hard time studying about foot washing as a spiritual discipline without my bias interfering with my study. Rather than skirt around it, I would like to invite you into this thinking, my thinking, as we move through this section of scripture together. One of my main issues with foot washing today is that it's more like a sanitized imitation of what Christ does for his disciples. The disciples really only had one main mode of transportation at that time, and that was to walk. Unlike the trips we take today, they all wore open-toed sandals strapped to their feet as they traveled. And at the end of the day, the dirt and the mud that they had trekked over was left all over their feet. The story took place at dinner in John 13, which means they had likely ended their travel for the day and were getting ready to bed down for the night. The last thing for them to do after their meal would be to clean their righteously dirty feet. Before anyone could slip away to do so, Jesus bent down and washed their filthy feet for them. Now, when thinking of this image, it's no wonder that the disciples objected so loudly. It was a dirty job, and Jesus decided to serve the people anyway. Today, churches post 3 weeks out when they're scheduled to perform the ordinance of foot washing. Most people know that it's coming before it happens, and because of it, prepare adequately for it. Before anyone arrives at church, we scrub our feet, paint our nails, put on fresh socks, place our feet gingerly into protective outerwear, and walk around gingerly so as to avoid any undue sweat from collecting in our shoes. Then, and only then, are we comfortable exposing ourselves to another person touching our feet. It's just not the same. It isn't the habit that Jesus performed. It's a sanitized imitation. And that's okay. But my second issue with foot washing is that it has requirements that cannot always be facilitated. Case in point, when there's a pandemic requiring that we all remain 6 feet apart, which means no one's feet are allowed anywhere near one another. Because of this, we may feel as though this is a good time to shelve foot washing and focus on other habits. I think you might believe that this is my opinion, since I just spent the last few minutes debating the utility of foot washing and debasing our process of enacting it in the modern world. But honestly, I don't think a quarantine order is a strong enough reason to cancel foot washing. While I do think there is good reason to think that foot washing may need to be overhauled in a post-COVID-19 world, the lesson Christ was teaching in his ordinance of humility cannot be erased so easily. The disciples had the ability to wash their own feet. Jesus wasn't doing something that they were incapable of doing on their own. They did this same thing for themselves every day before this moment and would work to wash their own feet most days after this one. Jesus was providing an example of humility, not out of necessity, but out of duty to one another. When Jesus stooped down to clean the feet of the disciples, he did so as an example of what it means to be your brother's keeper. And a keeper is not above anyone else, but is instead the shepherd over what they intend to care for. Zookeepers are not the head of the animal kingdom, but instead make sure that the animals are safe in their enclosures and the patrons of the zoo are safe from harmful exposure to the animals they came to see. The relationship is not hierarchical, but it is based upon acts of service. Jesus is clear that he has done this act for the disciples to remind them that the humility and service are the keys to building community. Therefore, foot washing is a method of bringing kingdom business to the world. And without this example, we can work to believe that we can survive independently. With social distancing orders in place, you may have begun to believe that you may have to live this way for a while. By passing up this habit of Jesus, which seeks to build humble relationships among kingdom people, we are left without an example that Jesus taught us. But be clear, John writes in verse 15 that Jesus says, "I've given you an example," not the only example. This series seeks to discuss the habits of Jesus. To adequately do this, we have to talk about the habits of Jesus and not the habits that we have adapted to imitate Jesus, which means we have to go beyond the traditions of the church and look at what Jesus was teaching. In a singular pass of the opening verses of John 13, we may learn that Jesus taught us to do as he did when it came to the act of washing one another's feet. But subsequent studies of the gospel story, when read in light of the world we live in today, and with all the required parameters we are bound within, we're left with no choice but to dive a little bit deeper. So let's read through John 13 again. John tells us that Jesus felt as though his life was in peril, that his hour had come when he had expired from this world. In any other circumstance, with any other character, the story should have continued as follows. Aware of the danger he was in, Jesus looked up from his meal at the room full of his followers, whom had sworn allegiance to him and the gospel he promoted. And there, Jesus asked of them a favor. "I have never once called upon you to do anything for me, despite your constant request to provide for my needs," Jesus said. "But I am calling in these favors you owe me." The disciples gathered in around Jesus, ready to do whatever he asked of them, relishing any opportunity to serve the one whom had given them so much. "I fear that someone's going to come for me and put an end to my ministry to spread the gospel. I am not ready to leave you all, and 3 years of ministry was not nearly enough time to preach the word to all who need to hear it. So I need you to help me disappear for a bit, so I can protect myself. There's a pandemic of ill will towards me, and the best thing I can do is to fortify the stronghold around me so that I can survive in this lockdown that Rome has put over me. Therefore, I need you to go out to all the surrounding towns. Collect as many supplies as you can gather. Call in any debts you may have so I can have the funds to protect myself in case this gets much worse. Seeing as I don't know how long I will be staying here at home, I need to be ready for anything. Hoard supplies that seem as though they will suddenly be in short supply and high demand. Pack the pantry with food. Bring me all the toilet paper. And if the government is handing out any checks, make sure I get mine." With their marching orders in hand, the disciples set out in all directions to follow Jesus' command. In only a week, the disciples had returned with a mountain of shelf-stable food, toilet paper, cleaning supplies, and weapons. Sealing the door behind them, they waited until the impending attack took place, just as Jesus had foreseen. Before anyone goes tearing through the Bible to find where I pulled that scriptural reference, just know you will not find it. Because, of course, this is not what Jesus did in his moment of peril. Rather than panic, Jesus shows us what it means to pivot, choosing service to others despite the situation that would certainly call for self-protection. Jesus points us to what it means to be a kingdom keeper. In this situation, we would expect Jesus to lean upon his humanity over his divinity if it meant keeping himself alive. And who would blame him? It's super scary to face an unknown outcome, prolonged suffering, and surely a painful death. He would have been justified in sticking around longer and healing more communities. Imagine how many more miracles he would have performed if he had invaded the Roman soldiers and lived a few more years in relative quarantine. But that wasn't the example he chose to leave. He left us this one instead. An example of choosing the lives of humanity over his own. An example of putting community first. An example of being our brother's keeper before keeping himself safe and secure. Today, foot washing is out of the question, but doing what Jesus did for us is not limited to the washing of feet. Thankfully, this singular example is but one option when looking to do something good for another person. Anything that we do to show our community that we want to protect them from danger, disease, and darkness is an example of Christ's love shown in his final hour, which is why we're on this field trip today. Throughout this sermon, you may have been confused, and you may have wondered whether or not I had stitched together the wrong video to the wrong audio. But what you have seen is a collection of items from Home Depot, Target, and King Soopers here in Boulder. Now, as I studied for this sermon, I felt convicted to do a rendition of Christ's lesson in the 13th chapter of John in light of the inability for us to meet together and actually wash one another's feet. While poring over scripture, a letter came in the mail from the White House explaining that a deposit had been made into my checking account in order to supplement my income during this pandemic while businesses were closed. This check was intended to make sure I had a way to survive in these unprecedented times, and the government sought to keep me safe. But in light of reading for this section of Jesus' ministry to his community, I decided to use this check in a different way. And because of that, you're along for the ride to see where it went. On Monday of this coming week, we celebrate Memorial Day in this country, a time to reflect on the gift of freedom given to those who gave it all to protect that same freedom. While we cannot personally thank the brave men and women who sacrificed their lives in combat, we can protect those who followed in their footsteps and were able to return home. Now, I know there's a difference between Veterans Day and Memorial Day, and blending the two together is a point of contention in our society. But I did some research into those affected most by the pandemic and found that our veterans have been severely at risk due to the quarantine. Reports have shown that many veterans are vulnerable to contracting coronavirus due to their age and therefore may have difficulties getting outside safely to shop. Veterans living in residential facilities are especially at risk due to the potential for the disease to spread inside of group homes. Over this time of administrative chaos, many veterans have had their benefits unfairly denied by the VA. Disability benefits have been delayed, and veterans are experiencing diminished access to health care as many VA hospitals are understaffed. With many outpatient mental health programs on hold, veterans have limited access to facilities where they would typically turn for assistance. And because of this, calls from veterans to suicide hotlines as early as March were up 12%. With tightening restrictions on homeless shelters, many veterans have been denied access to outreach that would have otherwise been granted outside of the pandemic. It's estimated that there are 45,000 veterans living on the streets on any given night, and over 180,000 veterans are in prison or jail. As residential facilities close and veterans become eligible for parole or release from prison, an increased number of veterans have nowhere to go. Lastly, veterans living on tax-exempt income from the VA may be slow to receive their own stimulus checks. With one eye on the Bible and the other on this news, an idea sprung forward in the form of a question. What does it look like to be my brother's keeper in light of the work that these men and women did to keep me safe? The Bible says that we are to rely fully on God for all of our needs, even in the most terrifying of outbreaks. The news would have had me believe that if I store up enough food, cash, and weapons, I can outlast the pandemic safely. And I want to remain safe, and to be honest, I don't want to have to rely on anything more than my own ability to survive. But staying locked behind a closed door for 9 weeks has subsequently left my feet sparkling clean. So I need to go in search of feet that don't have the ability to remain so unsoiled, to find a brother to keep, to do something for someone else, to make sure I'm following the example of Christ, to engage in a habit of Jesus reflected in my own life, to do something that requires me to lean more on Jesus and not be sustained by my own storehouse. Which led me to reach out to the Soldiers Angels organization in Denver, with $700 worth of food and supplies to be handed out to those who could use it more than me, along with a check for $500 for them to use as they see fit. The next food bank event is on June 12th, and I've been invited to drive down with a carload of donations to add to the supplies that will be given out to 250 veterans in need. In addition to dropping off the supplies, I'll be including a letter explaining why this donation was granted to this organization and a link to this sermon. The letter has been uploaded to the front page of our website and can be found at boulder.church. Because of the supplies not being able to be delivered quite yet, there's still time to add to this donation. If you feel convicted to do so, maybe add in. There are plenty of feet to be washed, and this donation alone merely scratches the surface of what is needed in this community. If you too would like to contribute, you can contact me directly at murdoch@boulder.church, and we can arrange to have your items added to this donation in June. Now, the letter I'm attaching has been signed at the bottom on behalf of everyone watching this sermon, and not just from me alone. Because Jesus says in John 13, verse 16, "Truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. In May of last year, you, the Boulder Church, chose for me to be a part of this community. And because of your decision, I have this opportunity to share this message with our community. So this gift is really our gift. May you be blessed by the fact that you had an important part in doing this thing to bless others. Until we meet again, may you find reasons to be blessed and to bless others in whatever habits Jesus shows you to do in this time of uncertainty.
Walking around these walls, I thought by now they'd fall, but you have never failed me yet. Waiting for change to come, knowing the battle's won, for you have never failed me yet. Your promise still stands, great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. I'm still in your hands, this is my confidence. You've never failed me yet. You've never failed me yet. I know the night won't last, your word will come to pass. My heart will sing your praise again. Jesus, you're still enough. Keep me within your love. Oh, my heart will sing your praise again. Promise still stands, great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. I'm still in your hands, this is my confidence. You've never failed. Promise still stands, great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. Still in your hands, this is my confidence. You've never failed me yet. You've never failed me yet. promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You never fail me yet. You've never failed me yet.
May Jesus bless you with gentleness and a heart that is tender.
May Jesus bless you with strength against all evil.
May Jesus bless you with compassion and care for all people.
May Jesus bless you with courage that you will dare to be who you are.
May Jesus bless you with openness, understanding, and respect.
And may Jesus bless you with the power to make
Jesus. Oh.